everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive.
Oh,
We're going to be talking all about working effectively in associative networks.
okay.
And to do that, we've got a really cool guide that we're going to be looking at.
Oh, great.
It's from the Andalusian Agency for Volunteering. It
Interesting.
was originally written in Spanish, so
Oh, wow.
we did the translating for you guys.
Okay.
But one of the really interesting things about this is that even though it was aimed at nonprofits,
Right.
a lot of the principles in it
Uh-huh.
apply to pretty much any field where you have people collaborating.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
You know,
Yeah.
we hear that phrase all the time, working in a network.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a...
But have we ever really stopped to think about what it means and how to do it well?
It is a bit of a buzzword, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this guide really gets to the heart of, why networks are so important,
Yeah, let's start there.
especially in a world that's, increasingly complex and interconnected.
Why are networks so crucial?
Well, think about the scale of the problems that we're facing right now.
Right.
From climate change to social inequality. I mean, these are messy problems.
Yeah.
Multifaceted problems.
Right.
And they really demand complex solutions.
Uh-huh.
And the truth is, no single organization can tackle these challenges alone.
Right.
No matter how much expertise they have, no matter how much funding they have.
It's like trying to build a house with only one tool.
Exactly.
You need a whole toolbox to get the job done.
Yeah, a whole toolbox. And that's where this guide really hits home.
Yeah.
There's this great quote that says, "Our association by itself, without any help, cannot achieve its objectives."
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
It really dismantles that myth of self-sufficiency.
It does.
Isn't it?
It suggests that collaboration isn't just a nice to have, it's a necessity.
Okay, so this guide doesn't just stop at the why.
No,
It goes into the how.
it dives right into the how.
Lays out some core principles for making networks truly functional.
Yeah.
What were some of the principles that stood out to you?
Well, one that immediately grabbed my attention was the idea of recognizing diversity within the network.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that networks thrive on the unique strengths of each member. So it's not about erasing differences.
Yeah.
It's about finding that minimum common multiplier.
Okay, minimum common multiplier. Break that down for me.
So it's basically like finding that common ground where everyone can contribute their unique skills and perspectives
Uh-huh.
without having to conform to a single mold.
Okay.
So, imagine a network focused on environmental sustainability.
Okay.
You might have scientists with research expertise,
Uh-huh.
activists with community organizing skills,
Right.
and artists with the ability to communicate the issue in powerful ways.
Yeah.
Each member brings something different to the table,
Right.
but they're all united by that common goal,
Okay.
protecting the environment.
So it's really about embracing the and rather than the or. It's
Excellent.
not science or activism or art.
Yeah.
It's science and activism and art all working together.
All of them together.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What else did the guide highlight?
Well, another key principle is horizontality.
Okay.
It stresses that relationships within a network should be between equals.
Oh.
So it's not about top-down hierarchies,
Gotcha.
but about fostering a sense of shared responsibility and ownership.
That's interesting, but wouldn't that make decision-making more complicated?
Well,
I mean, if everyone has an equal voice, wouldn't it be difficult to reach consensus?
that's a valid concern, and the guide does acknowledge that,
Yeah.
horizontal structures require strong communication
Uh-huh.
and a willingness to compromise.
Right.
But the payoff can be huge,
Okay.
because when everyone feels like they have a stake in the network's success, they're more likely to be engaged,
Yeah.
committed, and invested in the outcome.
I can see how that would lead to a more sustainable and resilient network.
Exactly.
You're not relying on one or two key players.
Right.
You're drawing strength from the collective.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that ties into the next principle,
Okay.
which is the idea of synergy and teamwork.
Okay.
So it's about moving away from isolated efforts
Mm-hmm.
and embracing a truly collective approach where the sum is greater than its parts.
I love this idea. Can you give me a real-world example of the synergy in action?
Absolutely. So let's say there's a network of organizations working to improve healthcare access
Okay.
in a rural community.
Okay.
You might have a clinic providing medical services,
Mm-hmm.
a nonprofit offering transportation assistance,
Right.
and a local university conducting health education outreach.
Yeah.
By working together, they can create a much more comprehensive and impactful solution
Right.
than any one of them could achieve on their own.
Oh, okay, that's a great example.
Yeah.
It really illustrates how that collaboration can amplify everyone's impact.
Mm-hmm.
But with all this emphasis on teamwork, does the guide also acknowledge the importance of individual agency within a network?
It does. It brings up this principle of autonomy and interrelation,
Yeah.
which highlights the need to balance individual agency with consistent communication and connection.
So it's not about becoming a hive mind where everyone loses their individuality?
Well, not at all.
Okay.
Members still have the freedom to manage their own tasks and projects,
Right.
but they need to stay connected with the network, share information,
Uh-huh.
and make sure everyone's moving in the same direction.
Gotcha.
It's like a flock of birds flying in formation.
Oh,
They
okay.
each have their own wings and can maneuver independently,
Right.
but they stay connected and adjust their course
Yeah.
based on the movements of the flock as a whole.
That's a great analogy. It really captures that delicate balance between independence and interdependence.
Yeah, and then there's this final principle of participatory belonging,
Okay.
which stresses that being part of a network is an active commitment,
Mm-hmm.
not just a passive association.
Okay.
It means showing up, contributing, and being present
Right.
in the network's activities.
So it's not enough to just have your name on the membership list.
Exactly.
You have to be an active participant in the network's life.
It's about going beyond simply attending meetings and sending emails.
Right.
It's about offering your expertise, supporting other members, and actively contributing to the network's goals.
So it's more about being a citizen of the network than just a resident.
That's a great way to put it.
You have rights, but you also have responsibilities.
And it brings us to a really intriguing point that the guide emphasizes.
Okay.
This idea of relational associations in a relational society.
Relational associations in a relational society. What do you think that means?
Well, it seems to be suggesting that this trend towards collaboration in networks
Yeah.
isn't just a fad.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of a broader societal shift
Okay.
towards more interconnectedness and interdependence.
Interesting.
It's as if the way we're organizing ourselves in networks is mirroring the way society as a whole is evolving.
That's fascinating. I wonder if our listener is seeing this trend towards collaboration in their own field.
Yeah.
Think about your own work, your own projects. Are you seeing more emphasis on teamwork, partnerships, shared initiatives?
It'd be interesting to hear their perspective on that.
For sure.
But before we get too sidetracked,
Okay.
let's dive into the next section of the guide,
All right.
which I think you'll find particularly insightful.
Okay. Lead the way.
Well, now that we understand the importance of networks and the principles that make them work,
Right.
it's time to explore the different types of networks that exist.
Okay.
And the guide gets surprisingly creative with its terminology here.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of a cloud of mosquitoes network?
Oh, what?
Cloud of mosquitoes.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
I will.
That's certainly more memorable than decentralized network type A.
Right.
Right.
Well, get ready to be intrigued because that's exactly where we're headed next.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
Welcome back.
Last time.
We were talking about some of the key principles that make networks effective.
Right.
And we left off with
And we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger.
a cliffhanger.
With this intriguing the cloud of mosquitoes network.
Cloud of mosquitoes.
So tell me more.
Yeah.
What is a cloud of mosquitoes network?
Well, imagine a network of independent activists,
Okay.
all raising awareness for a cause online.
Uh-huh.
They might not have a formal leader
Okay.
or a rigid organizational structure,
Right.
but their combined efforts,
Yeah.
they're all buzzing about the issue,
Uh-huh.
creates a powerful impact.
Okay.
So it's very distributed with many centers,
Right.
connections, crisscrossing in all directions.
So it's like a swarm of individuals all working towards this common goal,
Exactly.
but without a central command center.
Without that central command center, think of it as a self-organizing system,
Okay.
very
Right.
flexible and adaptable,
Right.
able to respond quickly to changes in the environment.
So incredibly dynamic, but I can also see some potential downsides
Sure.
with that.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't it be difficult to coordinate efforts
Yeah.
and make sure everyone's on the same page?
That's a great point. And that is one of the challenges with a Cloud of Mosquitoes network.
Okay.
It can lack that clear leadership
Right.
and direction. It can be a little bit chaotic
Yeah.
and inefficient if there's no mechanism for coordinating those efforts
Okay.
and ensuring that everyone is working towards the same goals.
So it's a trade-off between flexibility and focus.
Yeah.
You gain agility and adaptability,
You do?
but you might lose some efficiency and coordination.
Exactly. And the guide also contrasts the cloud of mosquitoes
Okay.
with more traditional network structures,
Okay.
like the vertical and horizontal networks,
Right.
which we talked about earlier.
Remind me about the difference between the two of those.
Sure. So a vertical network is like a pyramid.
Okay.
It's very centralized
Uh-huh.
with information and decisions flowing down from the top.
Right.
Think of a large corporation with a clear chain of command.
Okay.
This can be efficient
Gotcha.
for decision-making and resource allocation,
Uh-huh.
but it can also stifle creativity
Okay.
and limit that flow of information.
Right. I can see how that top-down approach could create bottlenecks
Yeah,
and make it harder for people at the bottom to contribute their ideas.
exactly.
What about horizontal networks? Are they kind of the opposite?
In a way, yes, horizontal network is decentralized.
Okay.
It might have a core team
Okay.
or leadership,
Uh-huh.
but everyone has a more equal voice,
Right.
and there's more direct interaction between members.
Okay.
So think of like a grassroots community organization where everyone has a say
Right.
in the decision-making process.
That sounds more in line with the principle of horizontality that we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
but I imagine it also comes with its own set of challenges.
It does.
Like,
Horizontal networks can be more challenging to manage
okay.
because they require that high level of trust and communication.
Mm-hmm.
Among the members, decision-making might be slower,
Okay.
and there's a risk of things getting bogged down in those endless discussions.
Right. So each type of network has its own pros and cons.
Exactly.
And the most effective structure probably depends on the context and the
Yeah.
goals of the network.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, have you ever consciously thought about the structure of the networks you're a part of?
This guide has really prompted me to think about that.
Yeah.
I realize I'm actually part of several networks,
Yeah.
each with its own distinct structure.
Right.
It's interesting to see how that structure influences the dynamics
Yeah.
and the effectiveness of each one.
That's a great point. It highlights how important it is to be aware of these different types of networks and to choose the structure
Absolutely.
that best aligns with your goals.
Right.
But I'm eager to move beyond the theoretical
Yeah.
and get into the practical.
Okay.
How do we actually build strong?
That's where this guide gets really valuable.
Yeah.
It provides a roadmap
Oh, a rose?
highlighting 4 fundamental zones that we need to focus on.
Okay. I love a good roadmap.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
The first zone is all about clarity of purpose.
Okay.
It emphasizes having a crystal clear shared purpose
Mm-hmm.
that everyone understands
Right.
and buys into. And it's not enough to simply say, hey, let's work together.
Yeah.
You really need to define your collective goals,
Okay.
translate them into those concrete projects
Right.
and actions.
So it's about moving from aspiration to implementation.
Exactly.
It's about making sure everyone's rowing in the same direction,
Yeah,
that you're moving towards something tangible.
precisely. And then the next zone focuses on communication and relationships,
Okay.
which we touched upon a little bit earlier.
Right.
But the guide stresses that constant, transparent communication
Mm-hmm.
in all directions is absolutely vital.
Communication seems to be the bedrock of successful networking.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's the glue that holds everything together.
Right.
It's about fostering open dialogue,
Yeah.
active listening,
Yeah.
and a willingness to share knowledge and feedback.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just about conveying information. It's
Yeah.
about building that trust and understanding between members.
So it's not just about sending emails and attending meetings. It's
Yeah.
about nurturing those human connections
Yes.
that make collaboration meaningful.
Exactly.
Right.
The third zone focuses on sustainability and organization.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that to keep the network running smoothly,
Uh-huh.
you need resources structure
Yeah.
and leadership.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
This is it.
It's great to have shared goals and open communication,
Uh-huh.
but you need the infrastructure to support it all.
Absolutely.
All right.
And the guide really emphasizes that shared responsibility is key here.
Okay.
So it's not about one person or organization carrying the entire load.
Right.
It's about distributing that workload fairly,
Uh-huh.
empowering members,
Yeah.
and making sure everyone has a role to play.
That makes sense. It's about preventing burnout and ensuring that everyone feels valued and invested in the network success. Okay, so we've got clarity of purpose, communication, and sustainability.
Yeah.
What's the final zone?
The fourth zone is all about external communication and projection.
Okay.
It highlights the importance of engaging the wider world,
Uh-huh.
building alliances, beyond the network itself.
Right.
And making sure that the network doesn't become this inward-focused echo chamber.
So it's about amplifying the network's impact and influence.
Exactly. Advocating for the network's shared goals, raising awareness.
Okay.
Collaborating with other organizations and stakeholders
Gotcha.
to achieve that broader societal change.
So we've got these 4 fundamental zones.
We do.
Mission, communication, sustainability,
Yeah.
and external projection.
Yes.
It sounds like a pretty solid framework
It is.
for building any successful network, honestly.
That is.
Does the guide offer any practical advice on how to actually implement
It does.
these principles?
And that's what we'll delve into when we return for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay. Welcome back to the show.
We've been talking all about associative networks.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have from, why they matter
Yeah.
to the principles that make them effective.
The different types.
The different types, like the cloud of mosquitoes,
I love that one.
a very memorable one.
Yeah.
But, we've been building up to this point.
Right.
How do you actually take all this theory
Yeah. How do we put it into practice?
and put it into practice?
Right.
Well, luckily,
Yeah.
the guide gives us some real tools to do just that.
Perfect, because that's what I was hoping we'd get into.
Okay, great.
Give us the advice.
Well, one tool that stood out to me
Okay.
was the relationship map.
Relationship map. Okay, tell me more.
So it's a visual exercise, almost like, creating a family tree,
Okay.
but for a network.
Gotcha.
So each organization
Mm-hmm.
maps out all their connections,
Okay.
both within the network and outside of it.
Uh-huh.
And they assess, the strength and nature
Okay.
of those relationships.
So it's like a network ecosystem map.
Exactly.
You can see who's connected to whom, where the strong ties are, maybe where there are gaps or opportunities for more collaboration.
Exactly. It gives you that holistic view
Right.
and helps you identify areas for improvement.
Okay.
So you might realize, hey, we have a lot of connections with research institutions,
Uh-huh.
but we're lacking ties with community groups.
Right.
And that can kind of point you in a new direction.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to make strategic decisions
It is.
when you have that visual.
You can see it
Right.
in front of you.
Exactly.
Are there any other tools that the guide suggests?
Well, there's also a network health check,
Okay.
which is like a, regular checkup,
Like preventative care
preventative care for your network.
for your networks. I like that.
So it's a questionnaire
Okay.
that prompts members to reflect
Uh-huh.
on how well the network is functioning
Okay.
in each of those 4 fundamental zones that we talked about.
Mission communication, sustainability,
Yeah.
and external projection.
So it helps you kind of identify any red flags or maybe areas that need a little attention
Right.
before they become big problems.
Early intervention is key.
Right. Early intervention is key.
But beyond all these tools and techniques,
Okay.
the guide highlights what it calls the most important trick
Ooh, I love a good trick.
for successful networking. Are you ready?
What is it?
It's wanting to be together and do things together.
Oh,
Right.
it's so simple.
It is simple.
It's so profound.
It reminds us that at the heart of any successful collaboration
Yeah.
is that genuine human desire
Right.
to connect and make a difference together.
It really is about that human element.
It is. And the guide emphasizes that this desire needs to be nurtured and cultivated.
Okay.
It warns against common pitfalls,
Yeah.
like networks that are all action and no relationship building,
Right.
or those that are obsessed with organization at the expense of genuine impact.
We've all encountered those groups
We have.
that are so focused on the process
Yeah,
that they lose sight of why they even came together in the first place.
exactly.
It's about finding that balance
Yes.
between being strategic and being human.
Yes. You need both
You really do.
to build a network that's both effective and sustainable.
Well, this has been such an insightful deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding
Me too.
of what it means to work effectively in networks.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure exploring this guide with you.
Likewise.
And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired
I hope so too.
to, think differently about the power of collaboration.
If you want to learn more, be sure to check out the show notes.
Yes.
We've got links to all the source material there for you.
Thanks for joining us.
And thanks for tuning in.